Alguém gostaria já de fazer alguma pergunta ou posso prosseguir? Então, enquanto vocês estão pensando, eu vou continuar. Conn, enquanto você estava falando, eu fiquei pensando que você, ao mesmo tempo, escreveu um livro e testava as brincadeiras, né? Eu estava me perguntando como é que você tinha escolhido os verbetes, né? Os jogos, né? Bússola de agulha, bola de gude, ensinar o cão a sentar, enfim, a gente vive num mundo enciclopédico que tem muita informação, né? Quer dizer, esse livro poderia ter 6 vezes esse tamanho, ainda ser maior ainda, né? Então você, de fato, então escolheu para colocar aqui as brincadeiras ou verbetes relacionados às brincadeiras que você e seu irmão conseguiram executar. É isso. E as invenções também.
There is always an element of choice, of course, but in fact, bearing in mind I was not expecting this to be a big selling book. We did as many things as we could do in 6 months. We worked every day from, dark to darkness. And in the night, when my brother had gone home, I would write up the chapters and then put them aside. And we did as many as we could before time ran out. It is always possible to think of other things. And in fact, since then, people have sent me ideas. Things they did when they were children that I hadn't put in, some of which were very good, and a couple of which I put in the pocket version, partly because I was worried that people would... With a normal book, in England you get a hardback and then a paperback, like this, as a paperback. But then it didn't seem like a good idea to do this in paperback. It was too big. So a pocket book was a better idea, but I didn't want people to think I was just doing the same book again, smaller, to try and make money. It seemed slightly unfair, so I put in some extra chapters, to give something a little more. The strange thing about this has been in finding that people do care about exactly the same things. There was a worry that children today are somehow different, that they have computers and iPods and Nintendo Wiis and PlayStations, and that makes them different animals, if you like. But of course, it turned out not to be true. A 10-year-old is a 10-year-old is a 10-year-old. And yes, they have more distractions in life, but it turns out that a boy will be as interested in making a bow and arrow today, partly because it can be deadly, as he was, 50 years ago. And that was great fun. I've had a lot of responses now from fathers and mothers who have done these things with their children and had a lot of fun doing it. And I am very proud of that. I'm very proud of the book, partly because it was unexpected. And it's a nice thing, as I now have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and it's been a nice thing discovering that kids are still children. They do have other distractions. It is a very different world to the one my father knew and the one my grandfather knew, certainly. I mean, my father grew up in a house with no electricity and no heating, and in a very different world. But it's nice knowing that people are still the same. In fact, when I'm writing historical fiction about Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan, I always think back to that we are exactly the same as they are. 2,000 years ago is not enough. There's no evolution 2,000 years ago. They're the same people, perhaps a little shorter, but apart from that, the same, except that they are put in extraordinary, difficult situations. So I can empathize with those people, and I hope I can empathize a little bit now with the children of today.
Então, Conn, muita gente acha que os Nintendo, jogos eletrônicos, além de afastarem as crianças da leitura, fazem com que elas sejam mais imediatistas, mais ansiosas, né? Elas querem ter o prazer imediato, ganhar o jogo imediatamente. Você diria que com esse livro você faz com que a criança recupere a vontade de brincar, e de brincar com coisas simples, por exemplo, uma construção de um objeto em origami, de papel, isso ponto 1. Ponto 2, você também incentiva, pelo que eu entendo, o relacionamento com o pai. As crianças não conseguem fazer as brincadeiras sozinhas. A ideia é que o pai ou a mãe sente com o livro e descubra as brincadeiras com as crianças e possam construí-las, executá-las juntas.
I hope I'm going to remember both parts of the question. The first part is that it isn't an either or. It isn't that you will either have a child dealing with computers or they will be making a treehouse. You know, it's a modern world. They will obviously have elements of both. However, and I admit I do worry when a child is left alone to play a computer game for 8 hours at a time. I did that, I should say. I did that when I was about 14 or 15, but not when I was 6 and 7 and 8. And I find it worrying when there are very, very young children whose parents use computers as a nanny, as a way to keep them quiet. And I sometimes look at the faces of children as they play computer games, and they look like vegetables, sort of dribbling, and it's not nice. As for the relationships between boys and their fathers, actually, although I like the fact that boys can do things with their fathers in this book, very often when I was a boy, we did not do this with my father. And when the man knocked on my parents' door to ask why he had an arrow sticking out of the side of his van, that was without my father's knowledge until we shot the man's van. I think part of the fun of this is learning skills and crafts. And my father was a maths teacher, but he was also a qualified carpenter. And from a young age, I understood that there is immense satisfaction in doing things with your hands, in being good at something. All the things he taught me, to measure twice and cut once, how to handle a chisel. These things, there is an immense satisfaction in it. It's difficult to explain. And in comparison to that, playing a computer game, after 6 hours, you get sore thumbs. Making a table, after 6 hours, you have a table. There is a big difference, and there is something, I think, that gives me a lot of pride in making almost anything, or learning any craft. I can do a simple coin trick. That was a chapter that my brother did, because he's quite good at magic and coin tricks, but I spent a long time learning it. I can only do one. It's not very good. I won't do it now because I'll probably get it wrong. But it's immensely satisfying. And sometimes for very young children, or sometimes with dogs, because you can do it with biscuits and they don't know where the biscuit has gone, I like doing it. And one of the nice things, when you asked me about the range, the variety of subjects in this book, it's partly because as children there were no doors shut. We were interested in everything. I wasn't a maths kid or an English child or a science kid. I was interested in it all, and whether it was climbing up to a treehouse or making crystals or designing or discovering that human urine can be used as secret ink. Things like this I love. I suppose it's a love of varied and basic knowledge. This is why I love mathematics up to the age of, up to university. At university is too hard, much too hard. But below that, it can be fun. I like knowing things. I like knowledge, and I like facts, and I like history. So with my brother, who brought in things like chess and astronomy and various other subjects, we had a very wide range. And that was why I did it. I think I'll stop there.